Let's begin. The late afternoon sun filtered through the Venetian blinds of my downtown office, casting long shadows across the mahogany desk where I'd spent countless hours building my career as an architect. I was reviewing blueprints for the Morrison Center when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Drew Griffin, my son. "Hey, buddy," I answered, expecting to hear excitement about his upcoming graduation ceremony. Instead, what came through the speaker made my blood run cold. Sobbing. Raw. Broken sobbing that no 17-year-old should ever have to produce. "Dad." Drew's voice cracked. She destroyed them. "Slow down," I said, my mind already racing through possibilities. "What happened?" Mom cut up my cap and gown. "There's pieces everywhere." She left a note on my bed. His breath hitched. It says, "You're not my son anymore, failure." My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. 20 years of marriage to Candace McLean, and I thought I'd seen the worst of her cruelty. I was wrong. I can't go to graduation, Dad. I can't face everyone. I can't. "Listen to me, Drew," I said, standing up and grabbing my car keys. "Don't move. I'm coming to get you. And we're going to that ceremony." "But Dad." "Trust me, son. I have a plan." The drive from my office to the house I'd once called home took 15 minutes, but my mind traveled back 20 years in that time. I'd met Candace at a charity gala hosted by her father's company. She was stunning, sharp-witted, and came from money, old money that I, the son of a construction foreman and a school teacher, had never experienced. Her parents, Roger and Lynn McLean, ran one of the most successful real estate development firms in the state. I was a young architect then, hungry and talented, but without connections. Candace seemed different from the other socialites I'd met. She claimed to want authenticity, someone who'd earned their place rather than inherited it. I fell for it. Hard. We married within a year. Drew came along 2 years later, and for a brief window, I believed we were happy. But as my firm grew, as I started winning awards and building a reputation independent of the McLean name, something shifted in Candace. The woman I'd married began to vanish, replaced by someone bitter and controlling. It started small. Criticism disguised as concern. "Are you sure that's the right design choice, Stephen? You wouldn't want to embarrass yourself." Then it escalated. She'd belittle my work at dinner parties, always with a laugh that suggested she was joking, but her eyes were ice. The real poison, though, was how she treated Drew. I pulled into the driveway of our house. Technically still our house, though I'd been living in an apartment downtown for the past 4 months. The separation wasn't official yet. Candace wanted to work things out, but I knew better. She wanted to maintain appearances until she could spin the narrative in her favor. Drew met me at the door, his eyes red and swollen. At 17, he'd grown to 6 feet tall, athletic from years of track and cross-country, with my dark hair and his mother's sharp features. But right now, he looked small, defeated. "Show me," I said. He led me upstairs to his room. The navy blue cap and gown lay in ribbons across his bed. The fabric had been methodically shredded with scissors. This wasn't a moment of rage. This was calculated destruction. The note sat on his pillow, written in Candace's precise handwriting. I picked it up, reading the words that had shattered my son. "You're not my son anymore, failure. You've proven you're just like your father, mediocre, embarrassing, beneath the McLean standard. Don't bother coming to me for college money. You're on your own." "Dad," Drew said quietly, "I got a 3.7 gigapascals. I made varsity track. I got accepted to 3 good universities. Why does she hate me so much?" I turned to face him, placing my hands on his shoulders. "Because you're not who she wanted you to be. You're not a puppet she can control. And that terrifies her. I don't understand. Your mother comes from a world where image is everything. When I met her, I thought I was the exception to her family's rules. But the truth is, she wanted to own me, to remake me into her ideal. When that didn't work, she shifted her focus to you." Drew's jaw tightened. What did she want me to be? Perfect. But her version of perfect. Captain of the football team, not cross-country. Business major at her alma mater, not environmental science at a state school. She wanted a son who would join her father's company, marry into another wealthy family, perpetuate the McLean legacy. That's insane. Yes, it is. I glanced around his room. at the posters of national parks, the shelf full of books about ecology and conservation, the photos of him crossing finish lines with genuine joy on his face. But you know what? You're better than that. You're kind, passionate, and real. And that's why we're going to that graduation ceremony. Dad, I don't have a cap and gown. I know. I'll handle it. I check my watch. Get dressed. Wear that suit we bought for college interviews. I'll be back in 90 minutes. Where are you going? I smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. To make sure your mother learns a lesson she should have learned a long time ago. My first stop was the school district office. I'd made some calls from the car, and Principal Vera Rice agreed to meet me despite the late hour. She was a stocky woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Stephen, I got your message," she said, ushering me into her office. "I have to say, I'm disturbed by what you described." "It's worse than I described," I said, showing her a photo I'd taken of the destroyed cap and gown and the note. Principal Rice's expression hardened. "That's abuse. You know that, right?" "I do. And it's not the first incident. Just the first I can prove so clearly." She studied me carefully. "You're here for more than a replacement cap and gown. I need information. About Drew's class ranking." Something flickered across her face. "You don't know." "Know what?" She pulled up her computer, typed for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. "This is confidential until the ceremony, but given the circumstances." She pointed to the screen. "Drew is graduating as valedictorian. His weighted GPA is 4.2. Between his AP courses, his independent study in environmental science with Professor Timothy Stevens at the university, and his academic achievements, he edged out Meredith Bird by .03. I felt my chest tighten with pride and rage. Candace doesn't know. No. We only notify the valedictorian and salutatorian 2 days before graduation. Drew was informed yesterday. Did he not tell you? He probably wanted to surprise me. He mentioned he had something special to share after the ceremony. I paused, piecing it together. Candace must have found out somehow. That's why she did this. She couldn't stand that he succeeded without her approval, on his own terms. Principal Rice nodded slowly. "There's something else you should know. Meredith Bird's mother, Erin Bird, is on the school board with Candace. They're competitive, to put it mildly." The picture became clearer. Candace had probably learned from Erin that Drew beat Meredith for valedictorian. In her twisted mind, that wasn't a triumph. It was a humiliation. Her son had succeeded, but not in the way she could publicly claim credit for. He'd done it in environmental science and athletics, fields she considered beneath the McLean standard. "I need a favor," I said. "Can you delay announcing the valedictorian until later in the ceremony? And can you get me a list of everyone who's speaking?" "Why?" "Because I'm going to make sure Candace McLean sits through every moment of her son's triumph before she realizes what's happening. And I want to be there when it hits her." Principal Rice smiled, and it was a wolf's smile. "You know, I've wanted to put that woman in her place for years. She's made my life hell on the school board." "What did you have in mind?" We talked for 40 minutes, planning every detail. Principal Rice revealed that Candace had been pushing to cut funding for the environmental science program, calling it a waste of resources on tree-hugger nonsense. She'd also tried to block Drew from his independent study, arguing it was inappropriate fraternization between students and university professors. Every move Candace made was designed to undermine Drew's achievements, to force him into her mold, and he'd succeeded anyway, which must have driven her insane. "I'll need to make some calls," Principal Rice said, "but I think we can make this work. Do you have someone who can get Drew a new cap and gown?" "Already handled." "Thank you, Vera." "Thank you, Stephen. That boy deserves better than what she's given him." My second stop was the university, where I met Professor Timothy Stevens in his office. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the lean build of someone who spent more time in the field than behind a desk. His office was cluttered with rock samples, plant specimens, and photographs of wilderness areas. "Mr. Griffin," he said, shaking my hand, "Drew speaks very highly of you." "The feeling is mutual, Professor. He talks about your mentorship constantly." Stevens gestured for me to sit. "When you called, you said this was urgent. Something about Drew's graduation?" I explained the situation. As I talked, Stevens' expression grew darker. "I had no idea his home situation was that toxic," he said. "Drew always seemed so well-adjusted, Focused, passionate, mature beyond his years. He's good at hiding pain, he gets that from me. I leaned forward. Professor, I need to know. Is the offer you made him still on the table? The research assistant position? Absolutely. It's his if he wants it. Full funding, a small stipend, and he'd be working on the wetland restoration project. It's rare for an undergraduate, but Drew's work has been exceptional. Can you be at the graduation ceremony tomorrow night? And can you bring the official offer letter? Steven studied me. You're planning something. I'm planning to show my son that his accomplishments matter, that the people who truly care about him recognize his worth. And I'm planning to show his mother that her control is over. I'll be there. My third stop was a men's clothing store downtown. The owner, Arnold Costa, had been a client years ago when I designed his flagship store. He owed me a favor, and I was calling it in. Steven, he boomed, greeting me with a handshake. What brings you by so late? I need a miracle, Arnold. Cap and gown, adult size medium, by tomorrow afternoon. He whistled low. That's tough. Graduation season. Everything's spoken for. I know. That's why I'm asking you. You must have connections. Arnold thought for a moment, then grinned. I might know a guy, but it'll cost you. Name your price. Dinner with you and Drew once he starts college. I want to hear all about his plans. I felt my throat tighten. Arnold had lost his own son to cancer 3 years ago. He and Drew had met a few times at company events, and I'd seen the way Arnold looked at him like he saw something of his own boy. Deal, I said, shaking his hand. By the time I returned to pick up Drew, I'd made 7 more calls and set in motion a plan that would either brilliantly vindicate my son or spectacularly blow up in my face. I was betting on the former. Drew was ready, dressed in the charcoal suit that made him look older, more confident, but his eyes still held that wounded look. Dad, I've been thinking, he said as we drove toward my apartment. Maybe Mom's right. Maybe I am a failure. I mean, I'm not going to an Ivy League school. I'm not studying business. I'm not. Stop, I said firmly. Drew, look at me. He turned. And I saw my son, truly saw him. Not the kid Candace wanted him to be, but the young man he'd become despite her. Do you know what I see when I look at you? I asked. I see someone who chose passion over prestige, who chose authenticity over appearances. You could have played the game, son. You could have joined the business club, dated the right girls, said the right things. But you didn't, because that would have been a lie. And you're not a liar. But what if she's right? What if I can't make it on my own? Drew, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment and turned off the engine. Your mother and I are getting divorced. I've already filed the papers. And I'm not going to fight for the house or the cars or any of that. You know what I'm fighting for? What? You. Full custody. And once you turn 18 next month, that won't matter legally anymore. But what will matter is this. You'll never have to apologize for being yourself again. You'll never have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. Drew's eyes filled with tears. I thought you were trying to fix things with her. You said you were working it out. I lied. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to worry during your senior year. But the truth is, I've been building a case for months, documenting her behavior, gathering evidence. Today's incident? That's the nail in the coffin. You're really leaving her? I already left her, son. I've just been waiting for the right moment to make it final. And tomorrow night, at your graduation, I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly who Candace McLean really is. Drew wiped his eyes. What are you planning? I smiled. You'll see. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? He nodded slowly. What do I need to do? Show up. Be yourself. And when they call your name, walk across that stage like you own it. Because you've earned it, Drew. Every step. We spent that evening in my apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and talking about everything except graduation. I asked about his plans for college, his research ideas, his goals. For the first time in months, I saw him light up, saw the passion that Candace had tried so hard to extinguish. Around midnight, he fell asleep on my couch. I covered him with a blanket and sat in the chair across from him, watching him sleep like I had when he was a baby. Back then, I'd promised him I would protect him from the world. I'd failed at that for too long, letting Candace's poison seep into our lives. But tomorrow, I would make it right. The next morning, I made breakfast while Drew showered. My phone buzzed with messages from Principal Rice, Professor Stevens, and several others confirming the plan. Everything was falling into place. "Dad," Drew called from the bathroom. "The ceremony starts at 7. What time should we leave?" 5:30. "I need to make a stop first." "Where?" "You'll see." At 5 o'clock, Arnold Costa called. "Got your package. Where do you want it delivered?" "The high school. Principal Rice's office." "You're a lifesaver, Arnold. Don't thank me yet. Wait till you see what I managed to pull off." We arrived at the school at 5:45. The parking lot was already filling with families, students milling around in their caps and gowns, taking photos. Drew tensed beside me. "What if I see Mom?" Then you look her in the eye, and you smile. Because she doesn't control you anymore. Principal Rice met us at the side entrance, holding a garment bag. "Stephen, Drew, come with me." In her office, she unzipped the bag to reveal not just a cap and gown, but the gold honor cords for valedictorian and a special sash embroidered with the school's crest. "Arnold really came through," I murmured. "There's more," Principal Rice said. She handed Drew an envelope. "Your speech." I took the liberty of printing it out, since you probably don't have access to the one at your mother's house. Drew's eyes widened. "How did you? You emailed it to me for review last week. Remember? I saved it." She smiled. "Drew, you're going to knock them dead tonight." While Drew changed, Principal Rice pulled me aside. "Candace is already here. She's sitting in the front row with her parents. She's been telling everyone that Drew isn't attending. That he's unwell." "Perfect. Stefan, are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The ceremony began at 7 sharp. The auditorium was packed with nearly 400 graduating seniors and their families. I sat in the middle section, far enough from Candace that she wouldn't spot me immediately, but close enough to see her reactions. She looked impeccable, as always. Designer dress, perfect makeup, hairstyled in elegant waves. Next to her sat Roger and Lynn McLean, her parents, both looking equally polished and cold. I'd never liked them, and the feeling was mutual. To them, I was the working-class interloper who'd somehow tricked their daughter into marriage. The opening remarks began. Principal Rice spoke about achievement, perseverance, and the diverse paths to success. I saw Candace checking her phone, barely paying attention. Then came the student performances. The orchestra played, the choir sang, and through it all, there was no mention of Drew. Candace looked smug, satisfied that she'd successfully cowed her son into staying home. The processional began, and graduates filed in alphabetically. When the G's started, I watched Candace's face. She was still on her phone, not even looking up. Then, Drew walked in. He moved with quiet confidence, his chin up, wearing the cap and gown she'd destroyed. The gold cords gleamed against the navy fabric. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence. He simply walked to his assigned seat and sat down with perfect composure. I saw the moment Candace noticed. Her head snapped up, her face going white, then red. She leaned over to whisper furiously to her mother, who looked equally shocked. Roger McLean's expression was harder to read, but I caught a flicker of something, maybe respect, cross his face as he looked at Drew. The ceremony continued. Awards were announced. Perfect attendance, scholarship recipients, department honors. Drew's name was called for the Environmental Science Award, presented by Professor Stevens himself. As Drew walked to the stage, Stevens shook his hand warmly and said something that made Drew smile. The microphone caught his words. "We're lucky to have you joining our research team this fall." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Candace's face was a mask of fury. Research assistant positions at the university were prestigious, usually reserved for graduate students. Her son had earned something she couldn't buy or control. More awards followed. Drew received the cross-country MVP, the Community Service Award, and the Principal's Achievement Award. Each time his name was called, each time he walked across that stage with dignity and grace, I saw Candace's expression grow darker. Lynn McLean leaned over and whispered something sharp to her daughter. Candace's jaw tightened, but she remained seated, maintaining the appearance of support even as her world crumbled. Then came the moment I'd been orchestrating. Principal Rice returned to the podium. "Now, I have the great honor of introducing our salutatorian and valedictorian. These students have demonstrated exceptional academic achievement, leadership, and character. Candace straightened in her seat. This was what she'd been waiting for. The confirmation that some other student had outperformed Drew. Our salutatorian, graduating with a weighted GPA of 4.17, is Meredith Bird. Applause erupted. Meredith stood, looking genuinely thrilled, and made her way to the podium. Erin Bird was on her feet, camera flashing, beaming with pride. I saw her glance at Candace with barely concealed satisfaction. Candace clapped politely, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. If Meredith was salutatorian with a 4.17, then the valedictorian had to be someone else with a higher GPA. Maybe that Dennis kid from the debate team, or Flora from the science club. Meredith gave a lovely speech about friendship and following your dreams. It was sweet, heartfelt, and I could see Drew smiling as he listened. Then, Principal Rice returned to the microphone. And now, graduating with a weighted GPA of 4.2. Having completed multiple advanced placement courses, an independent research study at the university level, and demonstrated exceptional leadership both in academics and athletics, our valedictorian, Drew Griffin. The auditorium erupted. I watched Candace's face go from confusion to disbelief to absolute horror. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Lynn McLean grabbed her daughter's arm, hissing something I couldn't hear. Roger McLean, to my surprise, started clapping. Drew stood, and the applause grew louder. His cross-country teammates were on their feet, whooping and cheering. The Environmental Science Club joined in, then more students, then parents, until the entire auditorium was standing. Everyone except Candace and Lynn. Drew walked to the podium, and I saw him take a deep breath. This was the moment that could break him or make him. The moment he could show his mother that her words, her cruelty, her judgment, none of it mattered. He looked out at the crowd, and his eyes found mine. I nodded. He smiled. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady and clear. When I was asked to write this speech, I struggled with what to say. How do you sum up 12 years of education, of growth, of becoming who you're meant to be? The room quieted, everyone leaning in to listen. I decided to talk about expectations. Drew continued. We all face them. The expectations of our parents, our teachers, our peers, society. Some expectations lift us up, challenging us to be better. Others weigh us down, trying to shape us into something we're not. I saw several students nodding, recognizing their own struggles in his words. For a long time, I tried to meet expectations that weren't meant for me. I tried to fit into a mold that didn't match who I was inside, and I failed. He paused, letting that word hang in the air. I failed to be someone I wasn't. And you know what? That failure was the best thing that ever happened to me. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Candace was stone still, because that failure forced me to ask a question. Whose expectations matter? Who gets to decide if I'm successful, if I'm worthy, if I'm enough? Drew's voice grew stronger. I realized the answer wasn't in the mirror someone else held up for me. It was in the reflection I saw when I looked at myself honestly. He glanced down at his notes, then back up. I chose to study environmental science when I was told it was impractical. I chose cross-country over football when I was told it was less prestigious. I chose a state university over an Ivy League school when I was told it would embarrass my family. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. This wasn't a typical feel-good graduation speech. This was truth, raw and unfiltered. And standing here today as your valedictorian, I want you to know, those choices were right. Not because they led to this moment, but because they were mine. I owned them. I lived them. I became myself through them. He looked directly at Candace for the first time. To anyone who ever told me I wasn't good enough, thank you. You taught me that being good enough for someone else is an impossible goal. The only person I need to be good enough for is myself. The silence was absolute. Then someone started clapping. Professor Stavens, standing in the back. Then Principal Rice. Then Arnold Costa, who'd snuck in to watch. Then the students, then everyone. A wave of applause that shook the walls. Candace sat frozen, her face pale. Lynn McLean looked like she'd been slapped, but Roger McLean, he was clapping too, slowly, with an expression that might have been regret. Drew finished his speech with words about the future, about the class moving forward together, about supporting each other's diverse paths. It was beautiful, inspiring, and completely authentic. When he finished, the standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. As Drew returned to his seat, I saw several students reach out to shake his hand, to hug him. He'd given voice to something they all felt, and they loved him for it. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Diplomas were distributed, names called, the ritual completion of high school. Through it all, Candace remained seated, barely moving, while chaos swirled in her mind. When the last graduate crossed the stage, Principal Rice made one final announcement. Before our students throw their caps, I have one more presentation to make. Drew Griffin, could you return to the stage, please? Confusion flickered across Drew's face, but he stood and walked back to the podium. Drew, Principal Rice said, your teacher and mentor, Professor Timothy Stevens, has something for you. Stevens joined them on stage, holding an envelope. Drew, it is my great honor to officially offer you the position of undergraduate research assistant on our wetland restoration project. This position includes full funding for your undergraduate research, a stipend for living expenses, and the opportunity to co-author papers in peer-reviewed journals. He handed Drew the envelope, then shook his hand. I've worked with hundreds of students, Drew. You're one of the finest minds I've encountered. Welcome to the team. The applause was thunderous. I saw Aaron Bird's expression shift from satisfaction to envy. This wasn't just an academic honor. This was real-world validation, the kind of opportunity that would shape Drew's entire career. And Candace had tried to destroy him the day before his triumph. The ceremony concluded with the traditional cap toss. Hundreds of navy blue mortarboards flew into the air, and when they fell, chaos erupted as families rushed to find their graduates. I made my way through the crowd toward Drew. He saw me coming and grinned, a real, genuine grin that lit up his entire face. Dad! He grabbed me in a hug. Did you know? About the valedictorian thing? I might have had an inkling, I admitted. And the research position. Professor Stevens is a good man. He recognized your talent. Drew pulled back, his eyes bright. You planned all of this. Getting me here, the cap and gown. Everything. I just opened the doors, son. You walked through them. Mr. Griffin? We turned to find Roger McLean standing behind us, alone. Candace and Lynn were nowhere to be seen. Roger, I said coolly. I wanted to congratulate Drew, he said, extending his hand to his grandson. That was quite a speech. Drew hesitated, then shook his hand. Thank you, sir. Roger's jaw worked for a moment. Then he said, I owe you an apology. Both of you. I've been blind to what was happening in my daughter's house. The way she's treated you. Drew, that's not right. That's not how family should be. No, I agreed. It's not. And you, Stephen, I was wrong about you. I thought you weren't good enough for Candace, that you were using her. But I see now that she was using you. Using both of you. Where is she? I asked. She left, took Lynn and stormed out during the cap toss. I expect I'll get an earful when I get home. He smiled grimly. But I think I'll stay here for a while. Enjoy the celebration. He turned back to Drew. Your grandmother and I would like to take you to dinner this weekend. Just the 3 of us. If you're willing. Drew looked at me. I nodded. That's up to you, son. Okay, Drew said. I'd like that. After Roger left, Drew and I were surrounded by well-wishers. Professor Stevens introduced him to other faculty members. His teammates from cross-country hoisted him on their shoulders. Parents I'd never met shook my hand and told me how much Drew's speech meant to their own kids. Through it all, I kept watch for Candace, but she didn't return. We left the school around 10, Drew still buzzing with energy. I can't believe today happened, he said as we drove back to my apartment. Yesterday, I thought my life was over. Today, I'm valedictorian with a research position. Yesterday, your mother tried to break you, I said. Today, you proved you're unbreakable. What happens now, Dad? Now we go home, order pizza, and celebrate. Tomorrow, we start dealing with the legal stuff. The divorce, custody, though you'll be 18 soon, so that's mostly symbolic. And we start planning your future. What about Mom? I thought about Candace, about the woman I'd married and the monster she'd become. Your mother made her choices, Drew. She chose cruelty over compassion, control over love. She'll have to live with the consequences. Do you think she'll ever apologize? No, I said honestly. People like your mother don't apologize. They double down, blame everyone else, twist the narrative until they're the victim. But here's the thing. You don't need her apology to move forward. You don't need her approval to be successful. You already are successful, with or without her. We spent that night eating pizza, watching terrible movies, and laughing until our sides hurt. It was the first time in years I'd seen Drew truly relaxed, truly himself. Around 2 in the morning, as he was falling asleep on the couch again, he said softly, "Dad, thank you for having a plan, for believing in me. Always, son, always." The next morning, everything changed. I woke to my phone ringing. The number was Roger McLean's. "Stephen," he said without preamble, "we need to talk. It's about Candace." "What about her?" "She's been embezzling from my company. Has been for years." I sat up, suddenly wide awake. "What?" "After last night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the way she reacted, the way she's been acting for months. It bothered me. So I went to the office at 5 a.m. and started going through the books." His voice was tight with anger. "She's stolen nearly $2 million over the past 6 years." My mind reeled. How? Fake vendor contracts, inflated expense reports, ghost employees. It's sophisticated, which is why our auditors missed it. But once I knew what to look for, it was obvious. He paused. "I'm calling the police, Stephen. I wanted you to know first." "Why tell me?" "Because she did it for Drew. At least, that's what she'll claim. She's been funneling money into offshore accounts supposedly for his college fund, but the paperwork shows the accounts are in her name only. I thought about the note she'd left. Don't bother coming to me for college money. She hadn't meant she wouldn't pay. She'd meant the money she'd stolen for him was now hers, her final punishment for his failure. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Nothing. Just take care of my grandson. And when the news breaks, help him understand that this isn't his fault." The police arrested Candace McLean that afternoon. The charges were extensive: embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. Her bail was set at $1 million, which Lynn McLean paid without hesitation, but the damage was done. The story hit the news that evening. Local socialite arrested for embezzling from family business. The article detailed the charges, included a photo of Candace being led away in handcuffs, and mentioned her prominent role in society. It also mentioned that her son had graduated as valedictorian the previous night. Drew watched the news in silence, his face unreadable. When it ended, he turned to me. "Did you know?" "Not until this morning. Your grandfather called me." "She stole from me?" "She stole for herself, Drew. She claimed it was for you, but the accounts are in her name. She was using you as justification for her crimes." He absorbed this, then shook his head. "Everything she did, every criticism, every cruel word. And the whole time, she was the failure, not me. She was projecting, son. Her own inadequacies, her own fears. She tried to make you small, so she could feel big. I almost let her win. But you didn't, and that's what matters." The legal proceedings took months. Candace pleaded not guilty, claiming the money was legitimately earned through consulting work. But Roger's lawyers were thorough, and the evidence was damning. In the end, she took a plea deal: 5 years in prison, restitution of the full amount stolen, and permanent removal from any position at McLean Development. Lynn McLean tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, a mistake born of maternal love. But nobody was buying it. The McLean name, so carefully cultivated over decades, was permanently tarnished. Through it all, Drew thrived. He started his research position at the university, throwing himself into the wetland project with passion and dedication. Professor Steffens told me Drew was exceptional, publishing quality work within his first semester. Roger and Drew developed a relationship, meeting for lunch every week. Roger, to his credit, never tried to defend his daughter or minimize what she'd done. Instead, he focused on being the grandfather he should have been all along. The divorce was finalized 6 months after graduation. I got everything I wanted: full custody, though Drew was now legally an adult, the house, and complete separation from the McLean family finances. I didn't ask for alimony or support. I just wanted out. Candace, from prison, sent one letter. It arrived on Drew's 18th birthday. He read it in my presence, his expression hardening with each line. When he finished, he handed it to me. It was full of justifications, excuses, and accusations. She blamed me for turning Drew against her. She blamed the McLeans for abandoning her. She blamed Drew for being ungrateful and disloyal. Nowhere in the 3-page letter did she apologize or take responsibility. "Do you want to respond?" I asked. Drew thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, she wouldn't hear me anyway. He took the letter, walked to the fireplace, and burned it. "I'm done carrying her poison," he said, watching the paper curl and blacken. "From now on, I only carry what helps me grow." 3 years later, I stood in that same auditorium where Drew had graduated high school. But this time, it was the university's ceremony, and Drew was graduating summa cum laude with his bachelor's degree in environmental science. He'd been accepted to graduate school at 3 top programs. He'd co-authored 4 research papers. He'd been awarded the university's Outstanding Undergraduate Research Award, and he'd done it all with the quiet determination that had always defined him. Roger McLean sat next to me, older now, but proud. Lynn had passed away the previous year, her health broken by the shame of Candace's crimes. Roger had changed his will, leaving the majority of his estate to Drew and various environmental charities. "She could be here," Roger said quietly, referring to Candace. "She got out on parole last month." "Did she contact Drew?" "She tried." He didn't respond. We watched as Drew crossed the stage, shaking hands with the university president. His name was called with honors, and the applause was warm, genuine. After the ceremony, we celebrated at a nice restaurant. Drew, Roger, Professor Stevens, Arnold Costa, and several of Drew's friends from the research team. We toasted to success, to the future, to the work still to be done. At one point, Drew pulled me aside. "Dad, I never thanked you properly. For graduation night, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You don't need to thank me for being your father." "Drew, that's just love. Still, you had a plan when I had none. You saw the path forward when I saw only darkness." I thought back to that phone call, to my son's broken sobs, to the destroyed cap and gown. "You know what my plan really was?" I said. "To show you what I already knew, that you're remarkable, that you're strong, that you're worthy of every good thing that comes your way." Did it work? I looked at the young man before me, confident, accomplished, kind, and smiled. "What do you think?" He grinned. "Yeah, it worked." 5 years after that high school graduation, Drew defended his doctoral dissertation on wetland restoration and climate resilience. I sat in the front row as Dr. Drew Griffin, at just 26 years old, joined the ranks of environmental scientists working to save the world. Candace never attended any of it. After her release from prison, she'd moved to another state, cutting all contact with Drew. I heard through Roger that she'd remarried, this time to a man with money and no children. She'd apparently reinvented herself as a consultant, though her criminal record made that difficult. Sometimes Drew would get quiet, and I knew he was thinking about her. The mother who should have loved him but chose cruelty instead. But those moments grew rarer over time, replaced by the fullness of a life well lived. On the night of his dissertation defense, we went back to my apartment, the same one where we'd eaten pizza after his high school graduation. "Dad," Drew said, "I've been thinking about that night, when you said you had a plan." "Yeah? What would you have done if it hadn't worked? If I'd still been too broken to go to graduation?" I'd never told him the full truth. Then, we would have skipped it. We would have gotten in the car and driven to the coast, spent the weekend hiking in the redwoods, and we would have made our own ceremony. Just the two of us. But the valedictorian reveal, Mom's reaction, all of that, would have been meaningless if you weren't ready. The plan wasn't about revenge, Drew. It was about showing you that your accomplishments matter regardless of her opinion. If you needed time to heal instead, that would have been the plan. He smiled. "You always knew the right choice." "No. I just knew that choosing you would always be right." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Drew said, "I heard from Roger. He ran into Mom at some charity event. She asked about me." "What did he tell her?" "That I'm happy, successful, that I don't need her." "How did she react?" "He said she looked sad, maybe even regretful. But then she changed the subject, started talking about her new husband's business." "Some people never change," I said. "No," Drew agreed. "But some people do. You did, Dad. You went from trying to save a marriage to saving your son. That's change. That's just clarity. Realizing what matters most. Drew leaned back against the couch. Do you think she ever realized what she lost? I think she realized she lost control. I don't know if she realized she lost a son. Her loss, Drew said firmly. And I heard in his voice the absolute certainty that came from years of building himself into someone he was proud to be. 10 years after that fateful graduation night, I walked Drew down the aisle at his wedding. His bride, Renee Stevens' professor, Timothy Stevens' daughter, whom he'd met during his undergraduate research, was radiant. They'd bonded over shared passion for environmental work and a shared understanding of complicated family relationships. Roger McLean was there, elderly but still sharp, beaming with pride. Arnold Costa sat in the third row, having become like an uncle to Drew over the years. The church was full of friends, colleagues, and people whose lives Drew had touched through his work. Candace was not invited. We hadn't heard from her in years. As I placed Drew's hand in Renee's, I thought about that 17-year-old boy who'd called me crying, convinced his life was over, and I looked at the man he'd become. Dr. Drew Griffin, published scientist, loving partner, someone who'd turned pain into purpose. Take care of him, I whispered to Renee. She smiled. He can take care of himself, Mr. Griffin, but I'll stand beside him anyway. At the reception, during the father-son dance, Drew said, "You know what I remember most about that graduation night?" "What's that?" "The way you said, I have a plan, like it was a fact, not a hope. Like you knew without doubt that everything would be okay." "I was terrified," I admitted. "I had no idea if any of it would work. But you sounded so sure." "Because I was sure of you, Drew. I was sure that if I gave you a chance, if I showed you that someone believed in you, you'd find your way. And you did." He hugged me tight. "Thank you, Dad, for that night, for every night since, for teaching me that the people who love you don't try to break you. They help you build yourself stronger." Later, during the toasts, Roger McLean stood. His hand shook slightly as he raised his glass. "I want to tell you all something," he said. 10 years ago, my daughter tried to destroy my grandson. She cut up his graduation gown, called him a failure, tried to convince him he was worthless. The room went silent. But this young man's father had a different plan. He showed Drew that real strength isn't about controlling others, it's about believing in yourself. That real success isn't about meeting someone else's standards, it's about exceeding your own. Roger's eyes found mine. Stephen Griffin is a better man than I gave him credit for. And Drew is everything a grandfather could hope for, not because of the degrees or awards, but because he's kind, he's genuine, he's his own person. He raised his glass higher. To Drew and Renee, may you build a life as authentic and beautiful as the love you share. The toast was met with thunderous applause. That night, as the celebration wound down, I stepped outside for air. The summer night was warm, stars bright above the city lights. "Dad?" I turned to find Drew standing in the doorway. "Everything okay?" I asked. "More than okay." He joined me, looking up at the stars. "I was just thinking, 10 years ago, I thought my world was ending. And in a way, it was. The world Mom wanted for me, the person she wanted me to be, that died that night. And something better was born." "Yeah." He smiled. "You know, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't answered that call. If I'd faced that night alone." "You never would have been alone, Drew. Even if I'd been on the other side of the world, I would have found a way to be there for you." "I know. That's what I've learned from you. That real love isn't about grand gestures or perfect words. It's about showing up, being present, having a plan even when everything seems hopeless." We stood together in comfortable silence, father and son, watching the stars and thinking about the long road from that devastating phone call to this moment of triumph. "She called," Drew said suddenly. I stiffened. "Candace?" "Yesterday. I don't know how she got my number. She said she wanted to congratulate me on the wedding, that she hoped we could reconnect." "What did you say?" I told her I'd think about it. Then I hung up. "And have you thought about it?" He took a deep breath. "I think she's still my mother. Part of me will always wonder if she's changed, if there's a chance for something different. But the bigger part of me knows that even if she has changed, I don't owe her access to my life. She lost that privilege when she chose cruelty over love." "That's wise, son. I learned from the best." He turned to me. You could have poisoned me against her. Could have spent years telling me how terrible she was. But you didn't. You let me see it for myself. Let me make my own choices. That took strength. You deserve the truth, not my version of it. Still, thank you. He checked his watch. I should get back. Renee will wonder where I disappeared to. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Drew? Yeah, Dad. I'm proud of you. Not because you're Dr. Griffin or because you published papers or won awards. I'm proud because you chose to be kind when you could have been bitter. You chose to build when you could have destroyed. You chose yourself when the world was telling you to be someone else. His eyes glistened. That's because I had you showing me the way. He went back inside, and I stayed a moment longer under the stars. Somewhere out there, Candace McLean was living her life, probably convinced she'd been wronged, that she was the victim of circumstances beyond her control. But here, in this moment, her son was celebrating a love she'd never understand, surrounded by people who valued him for exactly who he was. And that was the best revenge I could have ever planned, not her suffering, but Drew's joy. The plan hadn't been perfect. There had been setbacks, hard days, moments when Drew struggled with the scars Candace left behind. But through it all, we'd worked together to build something she could never touch. A relationship based on mutual respect, unconditional love, and the understanding that real strength comes from within. As I walked back into the reception, I heard Drew's laugh, genuine, free, unburdened. And I knew that 10 years ago, when I told my crying son, I have a plan, this was what I'd been planning for all along. Not revenge, not vindication, not even justice. Just this, my son, happy, whole, and free. That was the plan, and it had worked perfectly. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.